My Uncle Ed, I think he made home brew, which is, I don't know, beer. But we never did see my folks consume alcohol in any form. They called him the Dry Squad, and he was a Mr. Drivey that had a confection store here in Issaquah. One evening after everything had quieted down and all the lights were out, and we had settled for the night, a knock came on the door, and my folks got up to see, and it was this Dry Squad. They wanted to know. They wanted to go through the house to see if we were bootleggers, I guess, or something. I don't understand, you know, and of course as children we all woke up and we were just scared, really, wondering what's going on. But they had to look throughout the house and they never found anything.
My dad was a logger, practically all my life, until he became chief of police of Issaquah in his later years. Mm-hmm. And him and I bought the Issaquah Hotel, and then he was a police chief of police here all that time. My dad and I bought the hotel in Issaquah. Mm-hmm. My mother ran the hotel, and I just filled in whenever they needed me. When he retired from the logging camps, they wanted him to be marshal. Rimke Stagner wanted him to be the marshal of Issaquah. I was down at the hotel one evening. A call come in that a woman has called the police because her husband had locked her outside the door. And she didn't have any clothes on. So Dad said, come on with me. So I got in the car with him and went over there. It's just about a block and a half now from the hotel. And he took off his coat and put it around the woman and knocked on the door. Told the guy to open the door or he's going to break it down. So the husband come to the door. They've both been drinking, you know, and so he come to the door and put him in there, and he straightened this guy out and got the argument over with, and we went home. But it was quite an experience for a young guy like me. He knew all the beer parlors, you know. There was 2 grocery stores and 8 beer parlors, you know. All he did is go from one beer parlor to the next. If anybody got in an argument or fight over cards or something, you know, he started up. Even his dad, he had to put his dad in jail one day. His dad was about, I don't know, 80 years old or more. And he was in this beer parlor, the log cabin, and sitting next to a lady there. And he was buying this lady a beer once in a while while he was drinking. And then they come in and sit down beside this lady, and he's going to buy this lady a beer. My grandpa got mad because he's interfering with his association. So, but Dad was called, and he went in there. He got a hold of his dad and took him out in the street, and he says, now, he said, for that, now you're going to have to sit in the jail, he says, so you sober up. So he took him up to the jail and put him in the jail. That's where the jail is today. And put him in the jail, but he didn't lock the door, see. So him and I, it used to be a big brick building right at the end of the hotel there. Well, him and I stood there, and he said, now you watch. And pretty soon, here come Grandpa out of the jail. Got on the railroad track and went down the railroad track going to beat 60 for home. I was coming home from work. I worked night shift. And right by the log cabin hotel, there was two couples there. And I guess somebody got jealous of somebody else, and they started to have a fight out there in the street. And I thought, well, and I was just coming home from work, see. I just got through the stoplight and coming up the road. Of course, there was no stoplight 7 days, but coming up the road, and I seen this commotion going on in front of the beer parlor, see. I seen my dad there, and there's 2 men there, and one woman is beating my dad on the back with her purse. And so I jumped out of the car and ran over there. I gave him my hand. He turned to me and he said, whose car is that out in the street? I said, that's mine. He said, get in that damn car and get it out of here, he said. And this woman was beating him on the back with it. So he took these two service people and put them in jail. He was a little bit taller than I was, but he was real husky. He used to do all the boxing in his younger days. Them days around Issaquah Rodeo here at baseball diamond, there was a grandstand about 3/4 of the way around it, you know. And out from the grandstand was the woods, a lot of trees, you know, all trees there. And they had rodeos there every year. I rode in the rodeo. I had 2 uncles that rode in the rodeo. And so I got in the pony races and stuff like that and ride the cabs out of the chute and stuff. But we was all under the grandstand there, standing there. And the old man said, my dad says, you guys want a drink? He says, I got some beer hid out there in the bushes. He said, I'll go out and get some. He says, okay. So, but 3 or 4 guys stood there waiting for him to bring back some beer, see. So I was standing there. Pretty soon, my dad come back and he says, you know, some son of a bee stole my beer. And there's a young stand there, I guess. I don't know if he stole it or not, but he popped up and says, well, that was pretty good beer I had, and bang, he hit him, see? Knocked him down cold. I thought he killed him. I started crying and everything because I thought he'd go to jail and everything. You know.
Issaquah on April 17th, 1971 through April 1st, 1982. Well, there was only 7 of us. Keith Moon and I were the first individuals that were hired by the city that had even college educations at all. And there was a chief, a sergeant, a detective, and then the rest of us were on patrol. Hank Bauman, he was an acting captain at the time, or an acting chief, but he was an actual captain at the time. And he got himself in a jam, and they actually terminated him later. And so then that's when Ron Procyse came to the city in 1973. And he actually is the first one that brought real professionalism to the city. I mean, nothing to say that it wasn't before, but it wasn't to the extent where Ron said, look, this is a profession, and this is the way you've got to act, this is the way you've got to handle yourself and everything else, and we're going to have rules and regulations. Well, we didn't have rules and regulations then. We just did what we darn well wanted to do. And so we had some structure. Then he and Mayor Hanson, they got into kind of a not a disagreement or an argument, but it was over the retirement, and Ron was not allowed to join the state retirement system that I'm in now, and was then. So he just kind of cut the strings with the city and went on his way and became a builder. Gary Anderson and I, we got along just famously. Gary Anderson was an officer who later became police chief in Renton. He and I were riding one night together on Graveyard. We found this guy slumped over the wheel on Highway 10, and he was passed out. And I mean, he had pulled over to the side, he was like this, passed out. So Gary walks up to the door and he goes, hey, this guy's, he's sleeping. I think he's drunk. So we said, okay, let's go have some fun with him. So we started running in place and banging on his window saying, hey, pull over, pull over. Well, the last thing the guy remembers is driving, doesn't remember pulling over and going to sleep. Well, all of a sudden he's putting his foot on the brake because he's already stopped. So we ended up arresting the guy for drunk driving. But I mean, he was just hammered. That was kind of one of the fun things we did.